Busch. Welcome to Note My Objection.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I feel like we were just talking beforehand about how, this is not going to be enough time to cover everything we want to talk about, because you're here to kind of talk to everybody and me about something that's really important to me, which is substance abuse, recovery, and sort of everything that comes with that. And my goal is to bring people on the show that know more about stuff than I do. And so that's why we have you here. So I really appreciate you taking time to be here and chat about everything. So we were just talking about the Lindsay Clancy stuff, which is, there's obviously, I talk a lot about sort of the intersection of mental health, substance abuse, crime, that kind of stuff. And, do you see in your experience, you see a lot of that intersection of like both addiction and mental health? Like, do you think it really comes like hand in hand? You ever really see one, without the other?
Well, we have a lot of co-occurring, right? Yep. So I think the majority of people with substance use disorder have some form of mental health, going on, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's the trauma. Sometimes it's trauma prior to picking up, and sometimes it's because of things that happen when you're using, right? So that's a lot of it too, is like I'm in recovery, but my childhood was great. I had no prior trauma. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I think it's always, that's the question. It's sort of like, sometimes it's like, nurture versus nature. Is it, the chicken before the egg, or how does that work? And like when I was growing up, I mean, the worst thing that happened to me was my parents divorced, which is, it's a little traumatic, but when you think about, things that sort of cause you to act out, that wasn't my experience. So I think it's important too, for people to understand it's not always that, right? Like you can come from a completely normal background and still end up in addiction.
Right.
And you see a lot of that?
Well, and because it's a disease, right? And I think that hinders, what I see is a lot of it, like people are less willing to admit or get sober because of the fact that they're like, yeah, but I make X amount of money a year. I have this, I have that. And it's like, okay, but like, how do you feel? Right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like if you want to die every day because you're, drinking or using whatever it is, and you live in you can have all the things. Right. It doesn't matter. It's like, we call it a soul sickness for a reason. Right.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I see like people and especially when we have conversations like that, they realize like, okay, the bottom doesn't have to be that I lost everything and I'm homeless. Right. The bottom is literally just like, how do I feel?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, because we talk about, you hear a lot about this kind of like rock bottom. And I think sometimes people misunderstand that to have to be this sort of like physical. And for a lot of people it is.
Right.
It doesn't mean that that's not it, but you don't have to allow yourself to get to that place. It can be how, like you said, I mean, if you have, a good job, you have a ton of money, sometimes that physical bottom might not come, or it might not come in time.
Exactly.
Right. And so you have to be paying attention to the things.
Like look at all the famous people, right? That you see in the media that struggle or commit suicide or all these things. And it's like, financially they're good. You know what I mean? It's like all that stuff really doesn't matter. It's like what's really going on the inside. You know what I mean? And I think that I get a lot of calls of people who do hit those bottoms, who are on Mass Ave, who are homeless, or they're in detox or wherever they are, and they're looking for the next step, sober living, that kind of stuff. So I do see a lot of that as well. But then I do a private practice, and with them, I see a variety of things. You know what I mean? People with long-term sobriety that just kind of want to come back and like revisit what's going on.
Right. Well, and I think too, because, there's a lot of facets to this, being sober, in recovery. It's not just, one part of it is getting physically off of substances. And then another is dealing with everything that, either it came before, or the stuff, like you said, that happened, while you're using, and the damage you caused there. And so it's it's kind of a multifaceted process to healing, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now you're in recovery yourself, or your long-term recovery is
18, almost 19 years. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And do you mind sharing a little bit of how you got into recovery yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, like a lot of people, I started young, like around 12 years old. I grew up in Hyde Park. It was
Yeah.
It was easy, right?
Yeah.
Like it was, I have two older brothers.
A lot of us were hanging on the corner, just, and there are a lot of people who did that and are completely normal.
And are completely
today.
fine, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends did that with me and they're completely normal people, functioning adults, right? And for me, it was just, I believe the disease of alcoholism where like once I start, I can't stop. Once I stop, I can't stay stopped, right? And that's any substance for me. Doesn't matter, right? Like I do drugs alcoholically too. So it is what it is, you know? And for me, it got to a point in high school. I mean, I started at 12, like I said, smoking weed, taking pills, drinking, all that stuff. And then by the time I was 17 years old, I was at a place where like nothing was enough and I wanted to die. Yeah. And I tried to end my life and woke up at Milton Hospital from an intentional overdose of pills and like they're pumping my stomach, all this stuff. And I remember just like kind of sitting there and my poor parents, I mean, just amazing people. And they're just like, what happened? You know what I mean?
Well, and like you said, you didn't have that sort of trauma. So I think for parents, and as a parent yourself now, and those are the things we think about and you go like, whoa, I'm sure, for both of us at that time, it's like, where did this go wrong?
What
like how did we get to this point?
Right. I remember my dad asking like, what happened to you? He thought that there was a traumatic event.
Like an impetus for.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. I can't deal with life. Like this makes me function. I don't understand, Right. So I went to McLean for a little bit, came out, whatever, finished. I graduated at Fontbonne Academy. I went on to college, ended up at UMass Boston. And at this point, the drinking was progressing. It's a progressive disease. I didn't know that at the time. By the time I got out of there, I graduated with a degree in psychology. I figured I'll figure it out. I'll study psychology and then I'll fix it. It'll be great. Yep. And that obviously didn't work. So then I was working at the Home for Little Wanderers. I was running a group home up in Roxbury and it's like, and then I found myself like, I was a daily drinker. Yeah. And I didn't know how I got there. And it was like every single day I'd be like, I'm not going to drink today. And I would end up drunk. And so I showed up in AA and, I didn't get it right away. I relapsed a lot. There was a lot of good people around me that kept, encouraging me and helping me, and thank God. And for me, like I ended up like in the, the 12-step program. And that was kind of where I was able to like do the 12 steps with another person. And anybody who doesn't know about the 12 steps, it's like, there's so many 12 steps groups. Sure. And they're all similar, right? Yep. And that was kind of what happened for me. And I'm still pretty involved in that program today.
And, obviously there's so many different, from my perspective, there's a lot of ways people can get sober. Absolutely. But I do think that as somebody who also went through the 12 steps, I often feel like it's such a guidepost for life and how to live well. Like it's something I think even if you're not in, sobriety, because I do think it really, for me, going through for the first time at 22, still today at 41, it sort of informs so much of my life and like how, the actions I take and how I like present myself to the world. And part of the 12 steps is, giving it back once you get it. And I think it's also, you want to give back what you got in recovery, but also just sort of this general idea of like helping. And so you're currently, so you got sober. How old were you when you got sober?
So I got sober the day before my 26th birthday. Wow. So I was 25. Yeah. Wow,
good for
which
you.
Is crazy.
And how was it in early sobriety? Like, was it
chaotic?
Did you feel, good right away? Was it difficult? Like, what was your experience?
Looking back, like in the middle of it, I was like, it's, obviously it was tough, right? It was like the obsession and I want to drink and and all this stuff. And like, going through that process, things started to get better. But when I look back now, I go, that first year, like I didn't have any responsibilities. Life was good. Right. We had a blast. We were going everywhere, doing everything, just having fun. And, like now I look back and I was like, wow, I was living the life. You know what I mean? Now it's like sobriety's given me so much. Sure. My life is so full today, which is amazing, but it's like, it was fun. Yeah. But it doesn't take away of how hard it is in the first year. It's
and did you stay in the Boston area? Like, were you still, and I think sometimes that's even more, more power to you, because a lot of people have to remove themselves, not that geography cures everything, but sometimes it does give you the ability to sort of, I commend you for that. You're in your 20s, you're in Boston and you're still putting all that effort in and stayed sober all this time. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So, and it's been a ride. And I think, like you said too, so for me, it was like the whole given back thing. It was like, yes, I started helping other people and all that stuff that are trying to get sober. But then I like the volunteer stuff I took to like a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Because it really does. It's like you help others and then you feel good.
Right.
And it's like this constant, thing where you want to like continue to do it once you start. Right. So that's how I started the nonprofit. I am involved in my brother's keeper up in Easton. So I started to kind of do all these things and give back and realize that was like it was just like a passion, right? That was like a purpose.
Well, I'm sure like it seems to me like it's almost like your calling, right? It's like you were, given this opportunity, another chance at life, and, you took it and you decided to use it to help other people. And so you mentioned the foundation.
Yes.
And what is the foundation?
So Resources for Recovery, formerly Dennis Messing Memorial Foundation. What we do is we scholarship people to sober living.
Yep.
We started, when we initially started, we would scholarship people to like the Plymouth House in New Hampshire, 12-step treatment. But then now they take insurance. Things have changed so much over the last 10 years.
I know we can get into that. It's a lot. Well, so I don't want to, we can get into that after, but so you said it was the Dennis Messing Memorial Foundation. And what prompted you to start that? Was Dennis Messing somebody that you were personally,
he was,
that you lost?
So it actually was my friend Stevie.
Okay.
And Stevie Benson he was like in treatment for like the 100th time. And he had called our other friend or whatever. And I said, ask him if I could start a GoFund to get him up to the Plymouth House. Cause at this point we need to do something.
And for the Plymouth House, people, I'm sure people in New England know, but it's a 12-step, a pretty intensive 12-step retreat. I know it's a little bit different now in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we did this GoFund. In 2 days, we raised like $2,000. The guy at the time that was running the place called and was like, what are you doing? My mom saw this GoFund, right? Like,
sure.
We got to get him up here. It was like a whole thing. So he ends up going up there, and Kim Messing, who was Dennis's wife, had come to me and she was like, what's going on with Steve? And I'd love to help. And she basically was like, I raised money. She had a golf tournament for Dennis, her husband, who passed away, and raised, I think it was like $10,000 or something. And she was like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with it.
Oh, wow. So that's so interesting.
Yeah. So I
didn't realize that was how it all started.
Yeah, so I was like, well, this has kind of been a dream of mine. And I had and it's funny because I initially had thought about doing some kind of charity before this, and I called this guy, Jim Orcott, who was the founder of My Brother's Keeper, and he was like, Amy, slow down. I think I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, and he was like, you need to slow down. Like, if God wants you to do this, like, he's going to put it in front of you, and it'll happen, but you relax. I'm like, okay. Right. And then fast forward to this conversation with Kim.
But pretty amazing. He did, and that's what it is. He did put it in.
It was literally like, and she was like, I'm going to put you on the accounts. Let's start. Let's do this. And
so her husband, Dennis, were they involved in the recovery world or anything?
So yes,
they just wanted to.
So I knew them from recovery and from a 12-step program, and he passed away of an overdose. And so that's how we were connected. And then we just started going, we just started helping people, started scholarship people, started doing fundraising. And in the first, I think it was probably 8 years, it was all fundraising and donations and stuff like that. And the crazy part about it is it was 100% volunteer, grassroots, right?
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
It was pretty amazing. And it ran out of my house.
Yep.
So
so the first basically person that you helped was to get to a treatment program. Did it, just grow from there and did you do other things, or is it still based on getting people into treatment, stuff like that?
Yeah. So he came out and he immediately was like, I want to throw a wiffle ball tournament or whatever.
Very
so we started doing that and then it just kind of then we started just adding things. Yeah.
Yep.
And then in 2016, a year later, we decided that the kids, so my cousin Freddie had passed of an overdose in 2013. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I initially got this idea of I need to help.
What can I do?
I need to do something, right?
Yeah.
And his son, Jason, was 6 at the time. And I can remember after he passed, us driving and him saying if my dad kept going to those meetings, do you think it'd still be here? And it was and it just broke me.
Yeah.
And so in 2016, I was we got to do something for these kids. Who's helping these kids?
Yeah.
So then we started the kids program. And so the kids program is essentially anybody who's affected by addiction. And at this point, it's grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, especially for somebody who's lost a parent to overdose and somebody else is raising them. But also people in early sobriety, coming out of sober living, just struggling financially, but they're in recovery and really trying to do the right thing. We'll help the kids with extracurricular activities. We have a Christmas program that's been going for several years now. And like, if anybody's interested in that, go on our website and adopt a family.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of
we were just talking before we sat down about how there is such a need for help. And, and I'm sure, and this is why, for me, why I want to bring people like you on, because there's so much more and so many more people who need help. Right. And there's only so much, you and your foundation can do. And that, you were telling me that you have like Christmas applications. So, and you close them after a certain amount of time because you don't want to get to the point where, you're accepting too many people and then not able to fulfill it. But, it's something that it's a part of substance abuse, when they call it a family disease, it affects so much more than just the addict. And in many ways, affects the family even, is that what you see in your practice and in the foundation? Yeah.
And especially with the kids, because it's just people reach out with these stories and it's just like, every kid deserves a Christmas, right? And then also even further than that, like with the extracurricular stuff, it's like if kids have, substance use in their family, right? They're more likely, right? Because genetically, I feel like, right? You're susceptible. So keeping them in the sports, keeping them in the activities, horseback riding, like gymnastics, whatever it is going to keep them kind of engaged in something and give them a group that they feel like. I know my girls they do all-star cheerleading, and it's like they go to the gym. That's a safe place for them, but that's also where they like blow off steam and they learn that this is an outlet for me. Right. So mental health wise, it's good, but also it's another community that's like a positive influence in their life. So that's the other thing with the kids is I try to keep them, if we can help them stay engaged in something, then I'm like, absolutely, let's do it. Well, and I think too,
I'm sure it's not only, when you talked at first about sort of what causes somebody to be an addict. And sometimes it's like, it's obviously there's a genetic aspect to it and then also trauma that you incur. And so then when you think of a child who maybe loses a parent, that, it's like some often becomes, a cycle. And unfortunately it's like you become the exact thing that sort of caused you all that pain, and so if you have people who can sort of step in and intervene and say like, hey, we're not God, but we'll do whatever we can to make sure you're sort of on the right path. Right. And I think, like you said, sports and activities and all that kind of stuff. So is that just like a running application system that people, they just come to you and say like, this is the need and you fulfill it? Yeah.
And people don't, like a lot of people, it's like word of mouth because we have it out there, but like not a lot of people know. So we'll help somebody and then they'll tell a friend and then they'll tell a friend. And that's kind of how we get most of our applicants for that kind of stuff. But we've done like baby strollers, diapers, like stuff like that, where people are just kind of like, especially right now. Yeah. People are struggling, man. It's like, and with the food stamp thing, when they shut that off, it's like, we're getting, we're helping people with gift cards to grocery stores, things like that, because it's like, people need help right now, That's so just trying to do that. And we do get some funding from the state, which is huge. Shout out to Rob Consalvo, who is our state rep, who has an earmark for us. And it was put on hold for a minute.
I know, and I'm sure, and it is nerve-wracking, but it's so important to get your local, elected representatives in on this because, if the funds are there and they can be good to put to good use, then, so.
We're scholarshiping 5-6 people a day.
Are you really?
Like I just got off the phone with Recovery Centers of America, like on the way here, because they had a guy going to Rogley. It's just
and so can you explain to everyone like how does that like if you were going to get a call right now, like what is the normal sort of process? How does that look like?
So we have an application online. So there's an application for general scholarship, and then there's also a separate Hingham scholarship because we actually work with the town of Hingham. Okay, and we manage some of their opioid funding. So if you're from Hingham, you click the Hingham application and that will go to me and the social worker in Hingham. Okay. And we'll kind of go through that and talk together and then reach out to the person. And then I do all the placement just because like I know the people and the players. Sure. So typically I'll get any application I get, I'll read it over, either call the caseworker because a lot of times they're coming from treatment. Sure. Or the person themselves, depending on like the situation. And then I kind of like to talk to them themselves to see kind of where they're at, what the willingness level is. Because a lot of times, it's like people are just putting in the applications to 25 different places. Right. But then when I'm like, well, I only work with this house that has rules and structure, they're like, I don't really want to go there.
And so from, sort of the foundation's perspective, because you want to make sure that the money is going to somebody who's actually going to put in the effort in it. And as we know, there's a lot of people who aren't ready to get sober. Absolutely. And you don't want that, spot to take. So I'm sure it's difficult to make those kind of calls,
we trust the other people as well, like the caseworkers that are working in treatment with them, the houses that have approved them. But the good thing is, like, we have relationship with all the houses. Say somebody gets there, and this happened recently where somebody got there and I think he left after a day. So the owner calls and he goes, what do you want to do? Do you want me to refund the money, or what do you want? And I'm like, hold it for the next guy. Right. So we do have this relationship with most people that if that does happen,
or they're not just taking your money, they're not just keeping it.
Yeah, they're kind of like, what should we do? We have 2 weeks on this, and so the next applicant going to them, I'll say, all right, let's apply it, and then we'll bring the next person in at this rate. So it is good because they do understand that it's we only have so much money,
and you're trying to be helpful and of service. So and so when you mentioned that, like, there's certain kinds of places you work with, something that I think is a really important topic that we don't see enough conversation about is sort of like the fraud, mismanagement, misuse in the recovery world. And I can only imagine how difficult it is for people who, like you and I, we know who to call. We know this person to say, like, okay, don't go to this house. This is not good because A, B, C, and D. There's a lot of places that people are still using it and that people are just taking the money for rent and saying that whatever. So how do you kind of figure out what are the kinds of places that you feel comfortable sending people to? So
I always talk to the owner.
Yep.
I'll talk to whoever's the manager is usually. And we try to get out and tour the places as well, like as best we can, whether it's myself, Emily Solomon, who runs it with me, or any of the other board people. We try to get out and kind of see the houses when we can. And then, like, just usually you can tell by having the conversations, but also just being in the recovery community.
Sure.
For me, it's like I kind of know what's going on. But we did have a situation, I won't mention the name of the house, but for years we used this one house and the guy was awesome, 12-step oriented, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden we started hearing things and he relapsed. And so we found out. And
nobody knew.
Yeah. And so I think we found out, I think it was like from one of the guys living at the house or something like that. And it was like devastating because you're like, oh my, like, it's just awful, but it's like this guy.
Well, especially as somebody who obviously is in recovery and enough so that they're, giving back and running a house.
I know. And so to hear that he was struggling with all these kids, like, it's a lot. But she's like one of the best. Like, for me, it's like Women's House. She's great. Jackie Donovan's great.
Yep.
I don't know if you know Sherry Duggan. Like, there's a lot of women that I've known for several years in the recovery community that I trust, and those are the people I'm going to go to, right? Yep. Like, there's a couple new houses popping up that are good. That's, they're starting out. So I'm like, I went toward Rosewood, which is a newer house, Hannah Walsh, and they're doing good work over there, right? So it's like, but it's for me trying to get over to see these people, talk to these people. And like I said, most of them I've known several years, just from the community. So I know that they're like genuine and legit and actually care. And that's the main thing, is like, they care about the person. They're not there for the money.
Yep. And let me ask you, because there's often, we've seen a lot of, there's been a few people indicted, across the country, not just in Massachusetts, but for these sort of, they seem kind of scammy to me. And I don't know if you know enough about this to kind of explain it to us, but you hear about these people who get sent almost like kind of recovery brokers and like send people to different places in the country. We hear a lot about Florida. Yeah. I've known a lot of people not as much anymore, but previously
in LA, California,
who went down and what is that exactly? Like, what is wrong about that system? What are the problems with that system?
When that was happening, a lot of it, you can have insurance and go to treatment wherever you want, right? Like, that, legitimately, you can do that. But what was happening, and a lot of my friends fell victim to this, and almost, I don't know that they even cared, right? Yeah. At the time, they're like, oh, I can go to California. Awesome, right?
Right.
So what would happen is they would buy them an insurance policy.
Yeah.
They would bring them out to whatever state it is, buy them an insurance policy, run it for the 30 days, which is, like 30, 40 grand, whatever it is, collect all the money. And then after that, they wouldn't renew the policy. So they'd say
that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they'd say
so they would just find addicts and be like, give me your social and your ID and buy policies.
So
for them?
once you got, so like when a couple of my friends, at least two have passed, but three. I'm like trying to think, not because of that, but they did eventually overdose. But like, but they were part of it. And I remember one of them went down, and after like the month, he's like, well, what do you mean? I got like now, and another thing they asked him to do, he told us, was they would ask him to get on like the Vivitrol. There was different,
that a lot of the people who are, doing it and working the system are in, like, like you, even on its face a little bit, that it's not that I don't think people should be able to profit from, whether you run in sober houses or sober living, but you want to make sure that people are in it for the right reasons, ultimately.
Right.
And that, I think it does become, as we're all human, right? Like when you see a financial incentive and you see, oh, I can make a lot of money this way. Sometimes that's sort of the stuff we learned in the 12 steps starts to go away, and you prioritize sort of the financial aspect of it.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when that's like, and some people, it's like, if that's your sole income and you're like, well, I'm making a ton of money, this is great. So I think for us, that's a big part. During COVID, we saw a lot of that where people would reach out and didn't know what to do. And I was kind of helping navigate treatment. So that's another big thing I do a lot with families, is just hop on the phone, talk to them about it. And I had somebody call me and say like, oh, my boyfriend's on the phone with somebody from Florida right now. They're going to buy him a plane ticket, which is illegal. I'm like, first of all, you cannot, treatment centers cannot buy you plane tickets.
Right.
And I don't care if they make you sign a promissory note.
Yeah.
That's the loophole, whatever. But like, that's not a thing. Right. And like, we will, like, if I work with it closed now, but years ago we worked with the treatment center in Arizona.
Yep.
And my friend Bob he'd be like, just send them, like, whatever. He would scholarship pretty much. I think that's why, like, they probably went bankrupt for a scholarship and all the people in Boston. Yeah. But the foundation could buy the plane ticket.
Okay.
And they would go out, and I have people that are still sober from that treatment. I mean, I go, okay, so like, do you know what I mean? Like,
even just a little bit of pushback. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, this is not like, and people do, like I said, if you have like a PPO policy and you want to go away for treatment, that's legit. Like you can do that. And this place looked great online, but she said, it's like a hotel room and blah, blah. I said, you sent her somewhere without like, why would you not have called me before this? Like, I was so like shocked. I'm like, guys, what are we doing? We
have the resources. When you have someone to call them. Yeah.
Right. And we use a place in South Carolina, but it's a private pay 12-step. It's like the old P House was.
Yep.
So private pay 12-step, it's less money only. They have a great system there. What they do is you go there for the first like 6 weeks. And like, once they get you through the steps, they get you a job. They drive you to and from the job. You can't have a phone until you're through the steps. Like it's this whole, it's an amazing place. And I found out through Heron Foundation about it.
Okay.
When Kevin Michaelazek used to work over there, he had told me, he's like, you got to check this place out. And we love them. They're called Oaks Recovery in South Carolina. And so that place it's private pay though. So we will send people to South Carolina.
Yep.
And that's another thing where it's like somebody willing, but they want to commit to being there for a while. You know what I mean? And we've had a couple people that have come home early.
Yeah.
One girl drunk at the airport. I'm like, dude, how are you already drunk?
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, because so much has changed within sort of the recovery world and treatment. And when you mention this idea of like, okay, private pay versus insurance. Now, back in the day, like the Plymouth House, where I went used to be just private pay. So you either went there on a scholarship from somebody or you paid money for it yourself, or your family was, and I always say my dad, when they didn't know what to do with me, he went up to Southie Court actually and talked with a probation officer up there. His name was Jack Leary. He helped a lot of people with addiction in Southie. And he said to my dad, if I could send my kid anywhere and if you can afford it, I'd send her to the Plymouth House. And for me, the sort of maybe the lack of having anything else, you know what I mean? It's like back then, this is 2006 too. So it's a long time ago, but it's like no technology, no TVs. It was just like focusing on yourself. And I wonder, I have feelings about sort of this mixing of what's required when a facility now has to take insurance or decides to take insurance? Are there certain things they have to do that maybe seem to be a little bit in contradiction with some of the
part where it's like, well, we don't do clinical, we don't do medication, we don't do anything like that. So anybody with insurance has to take any kind of medical assisted treatment. They have to take, they have to prescribe. And I mean, not that there's anything, wrong with any of it. The problem is it's overdone. Right. So like everybody's like on a cocktail of, there's like the 5 things and like half the applications I get.
Yeah. And what do you think? What do you see? What are the 5 things?
Oh my God. Well, it's like gabapentin, Adderall, sometimes a benzo. And then usually like clonidine, which is like the blood pressure med, and the Seroquel for sleep.
I have heard about that. I'm like, just like regular people getting prescribed that?
Yeah. And it's supposed to, which I think I understand like the theory, and I don't know enough about it because I'm not a prescriber, obviously. And then the Seroquel for sleep as well.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they come out of treatment with that. But a lot of people say that, that's supposed to be short term. So that's the other thing is I'm like, what are the effects of some of the long-term stuff that should be maybe prescribed in detox, but not on the back end. So it really, but I think that's the difference is the clinical piece, which I think there's definitely a place for it, but sometimes you see people that are just like very much, overtaking certain things, especially the gabapentin. It's like, that's like for neuropathy, nerve damage. And I know people who are legitimately on it for those things. But I also abuse that. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't my prescription, so there's that, but
listen, the people who I know that take it that don't abuse it are like, regular people or older people who have nerve pain or whatever. And it doesn't do anything everybody else I know who has been on it abuses it. And so it's surprising, I see the same thing with Suboxone and stuff like that, and so I think it's difficult that we've kind of gotten into this, this is just from my perspective, my opinion. It feels very like murky to me because I do think that the overarching goal for most people and most providers is to help, right? So they're looking at it, maybe from a clinical perspective and saying, okay, you could be on this med or this med. But I think we also know that, and there are some people who have addictions to other substances and then they can take those fine and in safety. But I think that there's a lot of addicts who, if you give them something that's going to give them an effect, they're going to try to get more, the effect. You know what I mean? They're trying to get the effect. And then eventually, it, even though it seems like, okay, it's not, cocaine or heroin, it's still problematic because you're still in that sort of addictive cycle.
Yeah. And I think sometimes and I have clients that will come in for the private practice and I think it's important if you are on something like that, like whether it's like Suboxone, somebody comes in, I'm like, this is great. Like, let's do at least weekly because that way we can have this check-in, right? Where it's like, I know you're trying to do the right thing and we're working through this. And most of their goal is eventually complete abstinence. Like that, the ones that I see.
Right.
Some of them don't really have not take it for a day and then take 2 and you can play with it.
That's what
which
I mean.
is what kind of makes me nervous is that you can manipulate it, which the shot you can't.
Right.
But the good thing about the shot is say you get to the end of the month and you go I don't want to be on this anymore. Yeah. You're not going to get sick like you would when you detox because Suboxone detox is rough.
Not nice. Yeah.
And so I think that, and I've had a couple clients that have come off with the shot and they're like, Amy, I feel great. Yeah. And I'm like, that's amazing. And they're like, it's literally, and these people have been doing this for a long time. You know what I mean? Like one of them, he's, in his 50s. He goes, this is a miracle. Like, that's amazing.
Well, and it actually is, you think about sort of like medication and, medication assisted treatment. And I think the overarching goal originally is to be temporary, right? A lot of the problem that I see, whether it's methadone, or Suboxone, or whatever, is that you're just on it forever. And what does that really do? But like you said, the Sublocade, it's sort of it's like allows an off ramp that's not so aggressive, and it's an opiate blocker. So if you get the shot of it once, then it's in you, So it's
a nice bridge.
That between the two because it's difficult to get. And I think that's, that can be hard too when you're trying to get sober, but then you're also, treating mental health, depression, anxiety. So you're like, but my doctor says I can be on this, but then it's like, you kind of know in your head, oh, should I, is this, am I going to be able to get sober and really be well if I'm on this? And
I always tell people to thy own self be true.
Yeah.
Right? You know whether you're abusing it or not. Yeah. You know whether you should be on, whatever it is, right? Yeah. So, I'm not, and I think for me, my perception of MAT has changed.
People cannot be on anything. And you have to, and that's difficult, especially in sort of the world today where, medicated assisted treatment is so accepted, it kind of
whole battle, right? And then I hear about it in therapy and I'm like, okay, well, I think the prescriber is probably like trying to help you and has your best interest at heart. Yeah. But the other thing is like, I always say like, cause I used to say that too, like abstinence. But I think now I'm like, well, alive is probably
been had that, you know what I mean? They just had the opportunity to stay sober a little bit longer or on this and then would have gotten it.
It's like trying to keep, and sometimes that's what and I think that's why I don't really fault I used to get like so annoyed with some of the doctors, but like, I understand, right? Because they're looking at the situation and you're coming in off multiple overdoses and they're going, listen, this is what you need to do, period. Like, especially when you overdose and you end up in a hospital, that they're immediately going to try to prescribe you some sort of, because they don't want you to go out and overdose again. Right. And that makes perfect sense. The problem is when you get kind of into this realm of like, I can only live with medication.
Right.
That's where I see the problem, right? Because I'm like, well, like what, so a lot of times I'll also recommend people, why don't you do a med evaluation? Or if you're in a PHP IOP, why don't you talk, definitely mental health wise need medication, right? Sure. They need antidepressants. Sure. There's a need, there's a place for it, but it's just kind of like when you bring addiction into it, this co-occurring, you got to be real careful in my opinion, right? Because it just can go down like a rabbit hole.
For sure. And I think too, it's, like it's as with anything, it's every conversation about this stuff is complicated because, like you said, I think that's a good way to really look at, prescribing, Suboxone, Sublocade, stuff like that for treatment providers who see people coming in every day. I think it's harder if you can get a pill to sort of fix something. Are you going to do sort of the internal work that I think you ultimately need to do? And I'm sure there are a lot of people, but I wonder for some people if it's, like you said, if you're on medication, if you're not in treatment though, you're not in therapy, you're not going through things with somebody who's talking about it, can it be a crutch in some ways?
And you might not even know what the work is, right? Like you might not even know, right? If you have never been, to any kind of 12-step program or therapy or treatment, right? You might go to treatment and go, cool, I'm good. And then you go home and then the cycle continues because eventually you relapse on your, drug of no choice, right? Like, or whatever. And it's like, so for me, I always am like, that's why it's important to have these things in place. So if they come to like my private practice, I talk a lot about, let's get involved in some meetings. Let's get some kind of support group around you, whatever that looks like for you, right? Let's get a community around you, but people who are going to like, start to do this work with you on whatever 12 steps isn't for everybody, right? Yeah. So on whatever level it is for you, you want to go to smart recovery, you want to do the Dharma, the Buddhist principles, whatever you want to do, right? But let's get something around you so that you have this end all be all. And and I think people need to know that. And parents need to know that because parents think
that's right.
They come out of the hospital with their kid and they go, well, they're on this now. So they're good.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they should probably do some other work to get to a place because we need to figure out what that other stuff is. What's the underlying causes and conditions? Like we do that in the 12 steps in a 4th and 5th step, but like,
that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
You can also do that, in treatment and therapy, that kind of stuff. But like the people need to realize that there's more to this than just like, that's a Band-Aid for a bullet hole. Right. So like, let's figure it out.
And it's and it's important. And I'm sure, parents who have younger kids who, are in recovery and it's, it's so nerve-wracking and the family around it. But it's also important to know that, sometimes people get out of treatment, get out of a detox or whatever. And I mean, they're off and running. I mean, there's people who know while they're in there that I just need a couple of days to spin dry and then and I'm off. But then there's other people who get out and, you're thinking about it. You're thinking about it and you're thinking about it. And so if you're not going to meetings, if you don't have, in a sponsor or somebody to talk to, or you're not in therapy, those feelings of like, oh, I want to are eventually going to be, here I go. Here we go.
The obsession turns into, It's like once it's an obsession, I mean, all bets are pretty much off. Right. And then there's the flip side of that nobody ever talks about either. And it's funny because people come into my office and they'll be a heavy drinker. They'll be like, I don't know. Like I'm just concerned about my drinking. I'm like, all right, let's go through it. And then after a few months, they're not alcoholic, and they figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm always like, listen, I'm going to help you to make that decision.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what alcoholism really is.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what what is your relationship to alcohol, and lay your experience up against. Do you have a mental obsession, a physical compulsion?
Yeah.
And, really a spiritual malady, right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me because people will say like, oh, I had a client one time drinking every day, and it was like a routine. And then he just was like, I just want to stop doing that. And I'm like, okay. And then he just like stopped doing that. And I'm like,
oh,
okay. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So like there are people that like might, and even people go to detox.
Yep.
And they might detox, and then that's the end of the problem for them.
Yep.
For me, I detox, and that's where my problem begins, right? Because now I don't have the thing that was helping me, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm got to deal with self. Exactly. Yeah. Right. So I think that's another thing that people need to understand too, is that like not everybody is an alcoholic or a drug addict, right? Not everybody
you can have I mean, it is really interesting. And, we talked a little bit about it, and I've talked to my followers. I've been very open sort of about my journey in that, I'm not sober anymore. So I don't, and I never, it's really important for me to not, I don't ever want to misrepresent, my story. I stayed completely sober for 14 years, and I'm mainly a fan of the plant-based stuff. But, every once in a while, if it's a social occasion, I'll have a drink, things like that. And I will tell you that, it's something that it's a decision I made not lightly at all. And I knew there was a risk to it, but it was something that I just needed to explore for myself. And I know lots of people who take that risk and it does not work. Exactly, and I think I'm in the minority, but and I wonder for myself, it's like one of those things. It's just like kind of funny feelings inside, because I know, there's no doubt I was addicted to Oxycontin back then. Yep. And so I wondered, I'm like, well, obviously I had a physical addiction, and I was in that for, a good couple of years. And I wonder, like, maybe, I don't know, does that mean I'm not an addict alcoholic? Does it mean, things have changed? And, so it's an interesting, like you said, you have to be true to yourself. And I think only we know within like what we can and can't do it. And like I said, it was a risk for me. And it's, for me, it's something that's like, I can give or take. And I don't really, to be honest, I don't really like drinking alcohol because it makes you feel gross. Right. I mean? And so, but, and I recognize that, I can do that, but, it's not for everyone. But that's also something that for me sort of made me reflect on like, okay, like it's not one size fits all. Like we're all different human beings. We all, have different stories. What works for you might not work for me, and what works for me, like might not work for you, and probably doesn't. But I still, despite all that, I look at what I learned in AA and like the stuff that got me sober, and the people who were there at the beginning and in meetings, and I was up in Portland, Maine, and that like really shaped and helped me be like, I really believe it was like helped me learn how to be a good human being. Like I had the principles, right? Yeah, it really, and so it's interesting to see like, that's like, I find that really interesting that you work with people to sort of like even come to that. Yeah. Am I an alcoholic? Am I not an alcoholic? I have to tell you, I have had so many people around me who, mostly women, who have stopped drinking lately, but not like, oh, I'm an alcoholic, I have to go to AA. Just like, this is kind of a lot, and I think it's probably not best for me. And they do. Friends too, like and it's really interesting. And I think because like we're sort of just changing our perception about like a lot of moms and drinking wine and all that kind of stuff. It's like sort of this, oh, it's acceptable. And so, it's really, I commend people who just do that on their own and say like, this is not serving me in my life. Yep. And so there's people like that too. You know what I mean? There's a whole swath of
I have
us.
two, one 6, 7 years ago decided that. And I'm like, what? And she's like, oh, I haven't drank in like 6 years. I'm like, that's wild. And then another one too. I think it's been like 2 or 3 years or something she said the other day. And I didn't even like realize that. I was like, good for you. She was like, I just got to a point where I realized like I was kind of leaning a little too much into it.
Right. That's what everybody kind of realizes.
Yeah. She goes, and I didn't like it. And so I decided to stop. And I'm like, you know what? That's awesome. But, and like, that's a difference between them and me, right? Is like when I tried to stop, I thought I could. And it didn't dawn on me that I wasn't going to be able to until I was like, oh, wait. I get like through the day. It's like 9 o'clock and then I'm like, oh, I need a drink. Right. And that's the difference. Right. So it's like walking people through that kind of like how you like what's going on. You know what I mean? And I think it's a good conversation. Yep. So they know that I'm not like, because I think people come to like either a 12-step or I'm a LADAC, licensed alcohol drug counselor or something. And they think I'm automatically like, yes, you're this, you know, it's like, no, like it's not, I don't get pleasure in that. You know what I mean? Right. Like, no, you actually want to get to it. We want to get to you, aren't you? And we then we'll treat you accordingly. Yeah. We want to figure it out with you. And like, I still like, and I work with people who aren't either. I have clients that are not, you know, in substance use. It's mental health stuff. I'll deal with like light mental health stuff, not anything crazy. Just because like my license wise, right? So anxiety, depression, things like that. But a lot of people that come, it's like, we do talk about that because regular people use that as a crutch, right? Yeah. We just do. I mean, it's the society is like, you know what? How many people you hear are like, I need a drink. Yeah. It doesn't mean they're an alcoholic. It just means they're stressed out and having a day. Right. Yep. So then my job is to like, well, what else can you do? Right. 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 Some meditation, some prayer, if that's like something you're open to. Right. And I kind of give like some of these tools, these exercises, like, you know what I mean? And we talk a lot about, I mean, I talk even just people in general, like I talk a lot about morning time. And whether you're a spiritual, religious or not, and like, you know, if you are, then you probably have some prayers or things that you like to do, whatever. We do there's a bunch of recovery daily reflections out there. But I always say like that morning time before you go out into the world is so important to like set the tone and ground yourself. And it could just be a spiritual practice, like a meditation, 5 minutes. Right. There's plenty of YouTube's 5 minutes. My brain, you see how fast I talk. I'm freaking insane. So for me, 5 minutes seems like an eternity. You know what I mean? But just to like sit and like reflect. And then you go out into the world and things seem a little bit lighter. Right. So I think that I do a lot of that stuff with my clients. Really being intentional with your time. Like, okay, if I do I know I feel better. So like, let's prioritize doing A. And sometimes it starts as just like you said, just a small morning reflection, like just sort of setting like your intentions for the day. Exactly. How's it going to be? What are we going to be doing? That kind of stuff. Yeah. And I think like for me, and I'm busy, right? I got kids. It's insane. I got the 2 kids. We're flying out the house every morning. It's a lot. Right. So trying to really put that into practice can be difficult, obviously. Yeah. And it's not an everyday, I'm not, you know what I mean? But I do try to sit down and have my coffee. Even sometimes it's even after they leave or I drive them or whatever, I'll go back to the house and sit down and take a few minutes just because I'm like, I need to have that like time. Quiet time to just, you know, it's funny. I do that every day. I get, for the most part that I get the kids on the bus, I set a timer for 15 minutes and I literally just sit and I drink my coffee and I just, it's like, because it's, you know, it's important for moms. I mean, you know, and I'm sure there's dads out there. There's lots of dads who do it too, but you know, it's the mornings are crazy, especially with little kids. And, you know, and that's the thing. It's that, you know, all life gets in the way all the time. Right. So we have to prioritize the things that we know, like keep us in a, you know, state of wellness and feeling good. And if we don't, you know, and all of us know what those are for ourselves. Like I'm one of those people that if I'm stressed out and I need like to clear my head, I go for a drive and I drive my phone, speed a little fast on the highway, put the music up, like roll the windows down, get some fresh air. And I do. It's like, because I, you know, and I think that for me, the steps were like sort of the foundation to, I see sort of life now as this like sort of search for, you know, to be the best version of myself. Right. And so when I'm in, like, I don't like to be in like a negative space and sometimes it's good to like sit in it and feel it a little bit, but I know, okay, what can I do to get me out of this? Because otherwise, I mean, I can sit here and like wallow and feel bad for myself all day. And, you know, and some of that is warranted sometimes, but you know, if we can do the work, whatever it is, like you said, whether it's 12 steps, whether it's religion, whether it's, you know, yoga, if you can figure out what works for you to sort of chill and decenter, then it's like, that's what, you know, that's what it's all about. Yeah. You know, I mean, we only live one life. So I think like we gotta enjoy it. Yeah. We have to live it well. We have to, and take care of ourselves. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned the last couple years is like, even, and I hear a lot of people like with the work and this and that, it's like, I intentionally like take Monday and Fridays off. Like I just don't work on Monday and Fridays. And people are like,
I love it.
That's insane. I go,
it's not though. It's not. You probably work like a maniac Tuesday through Thursday.
Exactly. And I do all the nonprofit. I mean, I shouldn't say don't work, but I don't do my private practice. Right. So, but I do a lot of the nonprofit stuff on those days. Like, and I do a bunch of other things. But I also
you're not laying
I'm not just hanging on the couch,
TV,
right? But I'll also put in like somatic yoga. I go up to the Zen Loft. Have you heard of that? Maureen Hancock's place.
Oh, is that in Bridgewater?
Oh my God! So I've been going up there.
I've never.
And I've been going up there at least once a week, and that's pretty cool.
Cool.
It's very cool.
Oh, what's it? What?
So the somatic yoga, it's very light yoga, but it's very like like somatic. So like you're doing all the things, and then on Friday she does this other thing. It's like sound bowls and bath healing, and so. And I'm like,
I don't think I for some reason I just thought it was like a place where she does her shows.
No, she has so many classes. I'll show you the app later, but she's amazing.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's awesome. Yeah. So I've been doing just trying to do some like other like self-care stuff because I'm like mental health wise, like I feel like especially in the winter, right? Like the winter is. People just have seasonal affective disorder anyways.
Well, it's so cold even today.
I know. It's awful. I'm like, why, every day I look at my husband and go, why do we live here?
I know.
Why do we live here? I can't wait to retire. But, stuff like that and like the happy light and like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like just trying to do stuff to like make sure that I'm okay. Cause if I'm helping people, I need to be like, okay, myself to be able to help somebody else. Right. It's like, you can't pour for an empty cup type of thing. But I think the last couple of years I've really learned that. Cause before I would just like, if whatever job I was working, I was, working.
Yeah.
You just way more than I should
burning it at both ends.
Burning myself out. Yeah. Like then now you got the kids, you got all this other stuff.
It's a lot.
So it's like, now it's like, I always encourage people to like, I'm like, what are you doing for you? Like I have like one of those, it's like self-care assessments. Yeah. And it's funny because like you answer the questions and you go, wow, like I'm not doing well, right? Like I need some help, Yeah. And so I think that's so important too for people to realize that like no matter whether you're addiction or not, mental health wise, everybody needs to stop and go like, what am I doing for myself today? Yeah. And it's not selfish. It's really trying to maintain yourself so that you can be around, be a good mom, wife, husband, dad, whatever. Yep. Son, daughter, you know what I mean? The list goes on. Like, but if I'm going to show up for the people in my life, I better be okay. Right. So it's like that balance of, and I've been working a lot about actually the last probably like couple months. That's what I've been personally working on myself. Yeah. But then it translates obviously into my actual job because I'm like, oh, let's try this.
Well, and I think it's like I watched, oh goodness, I'm trying to think of who was on the show now. It was on the Oprah podcast, but she said, there's this quote from Maya Angelou and she said, what you get, give, what you learn, teach. And it's really been resonating with me lately. It was like a couple of weeks ago I heard it and I wrote it down and I'm like, you know what? It's such a good like sort of base to work off of because it is. I do feel like, we all sort of have this responsibility to share information, to help when we can. And I think, I think we're in a sort of the world we live in today is, I think that's more necessary than ever, right? Like, because we don't have people, we have a lot of division. We have a lot of, whether it's politics, whether it's, everything sort of this sort of social construct is we're sort of all pitted against each other and we see, the bad in people. And I think the way to get out of that is to really, like open yourself up and share yourself. Like, this is what I know. This is what I think helps. Like, let me be of service to you because, once you're on the receiving end of help, I think when you're in a place to help, you're more inclined to do so. So it's like, it's really just contributing to hopefully a cycle in which people, you were telling me, I appreciated the story you were telling me before. I'm going to ask you about it now because I think it's important. The woman you said she called, I think was it last year, maybe just a couple days before Christmas, the foundation, and how grateful she was. So she called and said,
I think it was like December 23rd. And she had 2 teenagers and she didn't have anything. Yep. And I was like, all right, don't worry about it. And she's like, so I just took my oldest daughter. We went to Legacy Place. We shot for these 2 kids. Yep. brought everything home, got it all ready, called her, and I met her. It was, I met her the 23rd, the night before Christmas Eve. In the parking lot at the, because Blue Hills Collaborative in Hyde Park, they let us use one of their rooms there to like work out of for Christmas. And so I met her there, and she was just, I mean, we both cried, I think. We hugged, and it was just like those moments of like, I'm off today.
Yeah.
This person needs help. Obviously, I'm going to help. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I try to instill that in my kids, where it's like, if somebody needs help, you help them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's whatever, tying their shoe, like it can be little things, but it's really like one of those things where like, I go to my Brother's Keeper a lot in Easton, and my kids volunteer there, and we do their Christmas program, and then we do our little Christmas program. So they're very like used to the volunteer thing, but I don't think it's registered yet about, I think it has
the effect maybe
as a little bit about how they love it there, right? The feeling they get when they go there, because they'll literally skip a party to go there. They'll be like, can we just go to the Keeper? I'm like, yeah. Oh yeah. So nice. One year they had like a dance cheer party thing that was going on. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's tomorrow. And they were like, can we just go to my Brother's Keeper? Like, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. It was, but so they do get it, but like, I think the older they get, the more they
see what, well, I was going to say that like even just, and I'm sure you have so many stories just like that, but how, like just that one interaction, think about how many people it affected. So like, it makes you feel good about yourself because you're giving back, and it makes this woman, not only is she going to be able to give presents to her kids, but when she sought out help in like probably a moment of desperation and like it's Christmas, it's 2 days before, like, what am I going to do? And somebody stepped in, and then for your kids to watch that all like actually happen. So they're not just hearing about it. They're seeing it and they're following, and that's what we do. It's like, that's what our responsibility, I think, as parents is to, like I always tell my kids, and I am really proud of them because, I've actually gotten a couple of calls from school from the principal about like really nice things that my daughter did. And I have to tell you, I'm like, and when I say to her is like, I really don't care whether you get an A+ on that test, but like when I get calls like that, because I know, that tells me you're paying attention to the world, and you're seeing that if somebody needs something, you can be the person to help them. Then, awesome. Then why not? And
that's really what it's about, right? Like that's our job. And that's why we need to, we need to showcase more people like you and what you're doing, because sometimes it's like, all we hear about is the negative. We just hear the negative. And really in everyday life, there's people all around who are doing wonderful things and running foundations and in every area, not just addiction, but, in different, all kinds of different services. My nephew has he's a trach now. He has a medical condition that basically caused him to be in the hospital at Children's for probably about 6 months. Most of it was like in the ICU, intubated, like very, very serious. My brother and sister-in-law moved down here from New York, and I have to tell you, people were so kind. They really were. And, we raised money for them, and strangers donated and, friends, people around, and that's what it's all about. That if you can be of service, you should. Right? Absolutely.
Like it's as simple as that. Like,
and we're seeing that now too with the Christmas program. I mean, we have over 130 kids right now that we're committed to serve locally, right? Well, when I say locally, New Hampshire, the Cape are on the list, but pretty New England, we're trying to stick to New England, but you have all these, the more that we get the word out, if you want to adopt a family, go on the website. The better, right? And but it does give them, like, I'll get calls all the time from people who have been doing this for years, adopted families from us, and they'll call it with the story when they delivered, what happened, and how grateful they were, and whatever, right? And it's just those calls I get, I just am like, this is amazing, because it's like the more and more people we get to go out in the community and deliver these gifts and be of service. It's like the person on the receiving end is so grateful, but also the person giving it is so grateful. They're like, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be of service. And I'm like, and we have like some of the treatment centers as like their staff. I'll give them a list, and every staff member gets a present. And then they all come together. It's like really cool. You know what I mean? So it's like one of those things where like you get involved, and then these people are like very excited to actually give back. So it's like people want to help. It's just getting.
Yeah, they do. And I think once you it's the gift. There's nothing like giving, like in true, like really giving, I mean, everybody can buy a present and give, like not necessarily in your situation, but anything. You go out, spend money and do this and that. And not all gifts have, that sort of meaning behind it. But I think when you do something genuinely for the good of something else, it sparks a fire in you. Once you feel that, it's almost a feeling you can't get, any other way. Yep. Like this feeling inside of you that like, this makes me feel like a good human being. So like, I want to continue doing that kind of stuff, you know? So is that what you do with the Christmas stuff? So you're dealing with all that now, basically.
Yes.
It's
so
like
we've
crazy.
been in Christmas mode for weeks.
Yeah.
And so we have toy donation boxes in various locations right now. We have a bunch of people who have already committed to adopt families that have been assigned. And we have a couple of them going to get out today later if you're waiting for your assignment. Because I was looking I did a couple this morning and then I had to come here. So I was like, I got to go back to it. And then we have a bunch on the list that will probably, like we have a whole crew in the Cape that needs to get delivered. So we're working on like kind of piecing everything together. Some of them come pick it up. Some need deliveries. So we're kind of like working on all that stuff now. But like I said, my friend's having Jane is having a event December 13th at the 24 South Club in Bridgewater. Okay. And we've already got about 11,000 in sponsors, which is unbelievable. Cause this was just literally a phone call with her and I on her way to work. Yep. Like, I want to do something. Maybe I'll throw a party. Let's do a Christmas party. I was like, okay. And like, so now I'm like, we definitely will have enough money to get all the kids presents. We just have to she's like, maybe my mom can shop. I'm like, we need some shoppers. Yes. So it's all going to come together. It always does, right?
I'm sure. It always does.
But yeah, so that's like she's selling $20 tickets for that. And then we have our Cookies and Cocoa with Santa, which is a free kids event. All my kids events are free because I just think they should be. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. People are always like, where's the donation box? I'm like, you can donate, but like, it's just for fun. Sure. But down at the Blue Hills Collaborative at the St. Pius Church, we have Santa Claus comes, anyone come get their picture taken, have some cookies, cocoa, hang out, and get information. This is for anybody, you know what I mean? I assume anybody, and I'm sure there's a lot of, because you have, like you said, I'm sure you have newly sober people with kids who might not be able to provide that experience, or kids who have lost parents and they're being raised by family members, aunts, uncles, stuff like that. So you sort of, everybody's welcome. All this kind of stuff. And we have just like the music going, and like we usually get actually a guy from the church last year reached out and he's like, oh, I saw the flyer. Can I make the cookies? And I'm like, absolutely. He goes, it'll be nice if it smells like cookies there. I'm like, dude, who is this man? Yeah. He's amazing. So I messaged him.
But he wants to give back.
Yeah, I messaged him like last week. He goes, absolutely. Yeah. So he's like going to be cooking, 300, whatever it is, a couple hundred cookies. Yep. Just to like, so they're freshly made, which is amazing. Because before we'd get them donated or go to Costco, whatever.
Right. I mean, there's nothing like a freshly baked cookie.
And it's just like people like want to help. Yeah. Right. That's the thing. People see something.
That's what it is. And
how can I help?
And once you're involved with it, it's like, oh yeah, I want to do that again. Yeah. Maybe feel good last year. You know, it'll help again this year.
And the little kids love it. I mean, my friend, it's just amazing, right? And Santa himself, he is just Santa Hags.
Well, you can do no wrong when it comes to Santa, you know?
So it is great.
So listen, I told you
we've overdone it.
Well, it's funny, Amy, when we sort of talked on the phone before, and then even before this earlier today, this is really a topic that there's so much to cover. That I'm like, there's no way we're going to be able to talk about everything we want to talk about in an hour. And that's why for me, this is sort of something that I want to keep. My goal here is really to sort of have these like general kind of topics that affect everybody all the time, and have different people on to talk about, different outlets, different places where they can get help. Because, like we said, unless you're in this world, you might not know to call an Amy Busch, right? You might just look at, something online or Google. So for as many people as we can reach and give resources to, like, that's really the goal. So, absolutely. So we always end with a couple of like random questions. Oh God. So, what would be your death row meal? If you had one choice, what would you eat?
Oh, like for a meal, if I was on death row? Yeah. Oh, probably filet mignon, definitely. And, mashed potatoes and grilled asparagus. I don't know if I've thought about this prior, but I definitely already have.
Well, that's what I'm with you. I always think of my mom would always make, just chicken cutlet with mashed potatoes and corn. And I'm like, I think that's what I would go back to. What's the best piece of advice you got in early sobriety? or even as you went along?
I think probably just like, I mean, I think this guy used to always tell me, and I used to hate it. And he used to say, a grateful heart will never drink. And every time I relapsed, I would come back to get a 24-hour trip and he'd go, a grateful heart will never drink. And I'd look at him like, I'm clearly ungrateful. Like I'm a brat. Like I don't know what, right? And then in like the first Thanksgiving, I'd be like, I remember it was like gratitude meeting. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. But today that just that little line for me, I'm like, he's right. Yeah. Because if I'm grateful for the little things in my life and I stay grateful for, I mean, now it's like all the big things too, right?
Sure.
But if I stay grateful, like, then it's like, I'm going to have that connection in that, you know what I mean? So I think that is definitely one of the things that I always am like, well, I always hear in my head, like a grateful heart will never drink, It's
funny too, because I always kind of joke about how, I think we all have like a little bit of like a hate of the AA slogans, but when you really think about most of them, they really are, it's like, it's like, it works if you work. Like, this is true, and faith without works is dead. Like I really do like, it's funny because I used to like kind of like that. Like when people would say, you go like, okay,
roll your eyes.
But once you have sort of done the work and you're removed from it, you're like, oh, right.
That's what they mean.
It's
even one day at a time.
Short and simple. It's almost like, they make them little and simple to like stick in your head like that. Yeah. One day.
And that's like people who aren't even in recovery are like, one day I have it. This is my great aunt's handwriting. She was, I love that. Yeah. And she was passed when she was like 94. She's like my bestie, but she was an Al-Anon.
She was
for a very long time.
Wow.
Her husband got sober 15 years before he passed. And so when she passed, they had given me her Al-Anon book. And there was all these little pieces of paper.
Yeah.
And it would say, and so it said one day at a time, and every page that it says one day at a time in that Al-Anon book, like she just randomly wrote. It was like so funny. So I got that for her. But yeah, and it's so funny because that was another one where I'd be like, dude, I don't know what you mean. And like, finally I remember like getting it. And I was like, I don't know what happened. My friend Tommy, I would be like, I'm going to drink today. And he'd be like, he had like 5 years sober at the time. He's like, yeah, wait till tomorrow and I'll go with you. And I'm like, okay, no regard for him.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
Every day for like 30 days. And finally I'm like, you're not coming, are you?
Yeah.
It's like, Amy, no. One day at a time.
Right.
You got through today. Right. And it was like, oh, right. And even now when life is lifey, one day, it's like, get through today. Yeah. Right. One day at a time.
You just have, that's what, I always think like, listen, the sun's always going to shine tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to come. Right. And like, most likely you'll wake up and you'll be thinking something different. So like, just give yourself a little bit of time, Give
it a day.
And you said you can't wait to retire. You're going to, where do you want to go? You want to retire?
I think we're going to go to Florida.
Are you?
Yeah. That's my husband's dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's on fire. So he's like, we're going to go to Florida. He's got this whole thing. We'll probably do, I would think we would do half and half.
I was going to say, it'd be like, well, it's funny. I mean, being in New England and as, as you get older now, I'm like, cause I used to be like, people live like the snowbirds, like half and half. Like, what do they do that for? And now I'm like, oh, I can see myself in 15 years, like, come like November, I'll be like, I'll be back in May.
My parents used to be snowbirds. And when I wasn't working full time and I had the kids and they were little, I would be down there for months.
Would you?
Oh yeah. And Dave would come for a couple weeks and go. I mean, it was amazing. I was like retired.
Yeah.
With toddlers. It was amazing. I was like, this is the best thing ever. I love this. Water aerobics every morning. I'm like, this is great. Like, I love it. But I mean, I think that would be, but I've been in Hyde Park my whole life. I don't know that I could ever actually leave for good.
Yeah. I know.
Like
I mean, we're all, Boston's that kind of place where like, we don't really, we always talk about, we want to buy someplace up in Maine at some point. That's where sort of like my like zone of it's the place I go where I just like actually want to like decompress. It's like really the only place I can go is like to the woods, like the beach and stuff's not for me. But I'm like, I couldn't even do that full time. I'm like, my mom's here, my dad's here, my brother's here. And we're all, Bostonians are like that. We're very, family oriented. It's like, well, I couldn't leave even if I wanted to,
I know.
But so listen, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell everybody where to find you? And we're going to link in the episode, we're going to put all of your stuff everywhere, even if you forget to say something specific, we'll put it in the bio so everybody can find you, donate, all that kind of stuff.
So resourcesforrecovery.org, but it's resources, 4 recovery.org.
Okay.
So that'll be linked. And then if you go in there and hit Christmas, you'll find applications there to adopt. And if somebody needs to apply, just email me. Don't tell Emily.
Because Amy's already gotten in trouble for reopening the applications because it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work on the back end.
And just trying to we have to fill what we can fill first to make sure we can get to everybody.
Before you take more.
But yeah, so that's the website.
And can you donate just in general to the program?
Yeah, so there's a donation button too.
Don't have a Christmas need or anything like that, they can donate to the foundation. That would go to, and that could go to school activities, a scholarship for treatment, anything like that.
And if you want to donate to specifically kids or specifically scholarships, you can even write that in the little line just so that we know where you want your money to go. I understand sometimes people have a preference. So so you can do that too. So there's just a general donation button on the website.
And you have your own private practice where you help people,
and that's Boston Recovery Counseling.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. And I think my page is, you have the link to the page. Yeah.
Yep. And I'll include that. Yep.
So I do in-person therapy in Braintree. Yep. I have an office there. Okay. And then I do virtual as well. And then I take pretty much every insurance, including Mass Health. Okay.
Which is great. And we didn't even get, we
didn't even get into that
time.
I know.
We were going to talk about insurance. Well, that's why you'll have to come back another one. So thank you genuinely for all that you do, because people like you are really needed in the world. And I hope that that as many people hear about, the giving back that you've been doing all these years. So I appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Amy.
If you like this episode, please comment, share, and subscribe. Every bit helps. Thanks for watching Note My Objection. See you next week.